Hey, welcome to another episode of M&A Stories hosted by Fifth Room Business Insights. I'm Anirban Sen, your host today.
And I'm Marcella Hall, your co-host. Thanks so much.
Today's topic is a very interesting one. As you know, storytelling and trying to convince your audience becomes key for any M&A integration. Pitching is one of the modern day arts that not a lot of people are familiar or are experts in. And that's why we thought of including pitching as part of our M&A storytelling, which is why we have the privilege of having one of the industry experts to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome James Church. Welcome, James. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
How's the weather in your part of the world?
The weather's pretty good. We've got a lovely sunny day today, so we're extending summer slightly, so that's good.
James, are you in London right now? Where are you?
I'm just outside of London, so I live in Norfolk, which is on the east coast of the UK, in a little village called Lingwood, which is just not far from the coast, so it's very idyllic.
Awesome. And I know Anirvan is in the Netherlands, and I'm in the US in Colorado, so we're all in different geographies, but it's great to be connected here today. And thanks so much for your time and joining us. We can't wait to get started. Thought we would start with maybe if you could just share a little bit more about your background, how you kind of land where you are today, and feel free to share, have you always been based in the UK or based in other places?
I've always been in the UK. I've always grown up here and lived here and built a business here, and design and brand and communication is my background. So everything that I do and everything that I do through my company, Robot Mascot, is through the lens of communication. And that's really what drives us. And that's led us, and I won't go into the long boring history, but over time that's led us to focusing into a niche of communicating with investors. And we found that we're really, really great at making complex things sound very simple and easy to grasp. And that led us into helping founders with their pitch decks. And then beyond that, it started moving into helping them communicate their financials, communicate their business strategy, and everything is through that lens of communication. So that's really our background. Ultimately led to me becoming the author of the best-selling book, Investable Entrepreneur, and where I document kind of the methodologies that we use to create this communication and get the results that we get for our clients. So it's been a long journey to this point, and there's been a lot of changes from sort of brand and marketing into kind of fundraising, but transferable skills that have really helped us define a real niche in our market.
Thank you.
Awesome. So, James, let's start with the whole pitching idea that business has been centered around, and you've been so passionate about this for the last few years, right? I mean, this is an area where not a lot of people are fully aware of what it takes versus not take. So maybe, share some background to it. Why is it so critical? And what are some of the concepts, principles that you use as part of pitching?
Pitching for me is like an entrepreneur's most powerful tool in their arsenal. It's something that being able to pitch, you can't really get your idea off the ground. It's something you do throughout the whole entrepreneurial journey, from that ideation and concept stage all the way through to kind of exiting your business. At every stage, you're pitching your business. You're either pitching it into existence or you're pitching to someone to buy it from you at the very end. And you're pitching for deals and partnerships. The ability to pitch is absolutely, a founder's most fundamental tool. And, if you take each step of the entrepreneurial journey step by step, constantly pitching your future, really. So it's a super powerful skill for entrepreneurs to be able to learn. And, I've created this methodology called the 6 principles of the perfect pitch. That's very much our process for creating a powerful pitch. We start off in the planning phase, plan and the financials. Move through to a construction phase where you start thinking about the principles of storytelling, the language you use, the structure of the narrative, and then finally you move into the creation phase where you actually create and design that kind of slide deck that's become so infamous. It's all about the slide deck, but there's so much work that goes into getting a powerful slide that nails a message. So for me, that's what it's all about, getting that message across in a clear, concise, articulate way.
Awesome. I think I know some founders who would benefit from your book and your work, so I will definitely pass that their way. Was curious to know, what are some common challenges that founders or startups may face as they're trying to pitch?
It's a good question. I think biggest challenges, we've actually come up with our own terms for those challenges with Robot Mascot Glossary of Terms, and we've come up with kind of phrases that encapsulate those challenges. So we've got things like the zombie stare, right? It's when you pitch your business to a room full of people and you just get that blank glazed over look, and they're all just looking at you like zombies. So that's a big challenge to overcome. If you're getting that zombie stare, you need some work on your delivery, you need some work on your message. Another big challenge we've got is a term we use, omnicular overreach. And that's when you're an excited founder and you're just pitching all of these different kind of variations and alternate kind of features and benefits you could add to your incredible idea. And it could be good in this market, in this vertical, in this space, and we could add this feature and that feature, and everyone's lost. No one knows what's going on or what your direction is or how you're actually going to take this to market and scale it in a sensible way. And then the final challenge is the wincy face. And the wincy face is when you know you suffer from these things, but you continue to pitch anyway. You continue to have that slightly awkward message. You know it's not landing, but you haven't bothered fixing it. You know your pitch deck could do with better design and it could look better. And you go, oh, I keep meaning to redesign the pitch deck. Don't worry about the slides. Or you hand over your business card and you go, oh, I'm getting a rebrand soon. Or don't look at the website. I need to redo. That's an old website. We're currently in the process of doing it. It's kind of making excuses for the fact you haven't properly articulated yourself. You haven't properly developed your messaging. Just kind of pull this wincy face every time you go and try and explain your business because you know you're not landing. You know it's wrong, but you just haven't found a way to fix it yet. So they're the big three challenges that we look to solve for our clients.
Now, you've seen hundreds of different pitches, right? Typically, a lot of people expect to be able to wing it on their first pitch itself. Typically, what's the number where people start getting it just about right? Is that number third, number fifth?
Oh, that's a great question. It really depends how kind of natural you are at pitching, of course. But it's hundreds of times. You're pitching hundreds and hundreds of times about your business in different ways, but there's the same core to it, whether you're pitching to investors or for sales or for partnerships. There's that same core message and that same core kind of ethos and value that kind of hooks everything together, potentially hundreds of times. I mean, look, Martin Luther King is probably the most famous pitch. The I Have a Dream speech is like the most famous pitch probably ever has existed. And, that one moment on telly completely changed the world, but he'd pitched that pitch hundreds of times up and down the country in local churches and church groups, and he was refining it until it absolutely nailed it. And then all of a sudden he was told he's going to do this massive TV address and it was going to be like the biggest moment of his career. So he thought, well, this is a big opportunity for me. I need something new. I need fresh material. Everyone's already heard my I Have a Dream speech up and down the country. I need something new. And he going to talk about how America had given minorities a blank check. It was going to be the blank check speech, which already sounds terrible, right? And he was pitching this new idea, this blank check. Everyone watching was starting to turn off and going, what is this? This is rubbish. And one of his big fans who used to support him at his tours and used to sing and get the crowd excited before he's like a gospel singer, I think, just shouted at him across the stage from backstage, Martin, tell them about the dream. Tell them about the dream. And he went into his natural practice, rehearsed I Have a Dream speech, and it's become like one of the most sensational pitches in history. And I think that just goes to show that once you've got it, once you've got something you're comfortable with, don't keep changing and adapting your pitch. Just stick with it. If it's landing, you may be bored of saying the same thing over and over again, but it's often the first or second time anyone's ever heard what you're saying. So just keep with it. Just keep the same pitch and over and over and over, and eventually you'll start getting that momentum and you'll just be able to deliver it in your sleep.
I love that advice and I love that example. Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Right. So just extending that conversation, right? So not everybody who's pitching for investment or M&A is likely to become Martin Luther King. Literally somebody who's starting out, right? So somebody who's got a startup, who's looking for some sort of late seed funding or something like that. How much time should they allocate to get about learning and practicing the art of pitching? And I know you and I, we have had conversations on this one. But is there kind of a number that people should plan, say, hey, I at least need to practice it with 20 people before I start getting a rhythm, a rigor, and a bit of natural, let's say, flow to the whole thing?
So my advice would be, think of your elevator pitch, your social pitch kind of first, the sort of thing you would say in an introduction, or you're at a networking event and someone says, what do you do? Get your short kind of 30-second pitch nailed, have it on your phone, record it on your phone so it's a video so you can watch it back, but also have it written down in notes on your phone as well, and just look at it every time before you walk into a networking event or go to take a call, and then just practice it. Even in the pub, when your mates introduce you to someone that they know and they go, oh, what do you do? Do it then. Like, just keep every opportunity to pitch is an opportunity to pitch. And then you've got your longer sales pitches, and you only really get good at those after doing them time and time again. So, if you can pitch, depending on your type of business, but if you're doing a weekly sales pitch or every couple of days, just the same pitch again and again and again, and eventually you'll get there. But it's about having kind of a few different kind of pitches of different lengths. You've got your kind of 30-second elevator kind of social pitch, have that on your phone ready to go, and every opportunity, whether you're talking to your nan or CEO of some large corporation, just whip it out of your pocket, just go, right, that's what I need to say, and go for it, and just believe in yourself. And you'll probably mess it up the first few times, but it's fine, just keep going, just roll with it, and get that confidence. And if you're saying the same thing again and again, it becomes just in your head, and you can just reel it off whenever. So it is just about repetition, getting that pitch just right, exactly how you need it. You'll tweak it a little bit in the early stages, because you'll figure out what lands and what doesn't land. But once you've got something that's working, don't change it. Just keep going.
I like that approach. Anyone, right? Your grandparent, you're meeting someone, or your friends, right, at the pub, and someone asks, what do you do? And just to kind of take every opportunity, seize every opportunity to practice your delivery and see how it lands.
At Robot Mascot, we have a sales process, and that results in one-to-one calls, but quite often we get people into a group, what we call a strategy session, a fundraising strategy session, and it's a 2-hour session where I talk about kind of the strategies around how we help our clients, that ends in a 20-minute sales pitch. So the whole thing's a long pitch, really. A lot of it is information that's useful and people can walk away with and get lots of knowledge and value from, but it ends in a very clear kind of sales pitch that gets people to sign up with us and work with us. I've been doing that same talk, a couple of variations on a few slides here and there, but that same talk for the last 2 years, every Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock. I am bored to buggery with it, right? I cannot stand that talk anymore, but it works, it lands. I'm bored. I would love to change it up, but it's landing. We're getting clients, we're growing. We've had the best few quarters on record. It's gaining momentum, and it's going and going and going, and it's getting stronger and stronger. I'm bored of it. I'd have changed it 18 months ago, but it works. And that's the way you need to do it. It's just, if it works, keep doing it, and you just keep pitching again and again and again, and then it lands.
Yes. And James, you talked earlier about the 6 principles of the perfect pitch, which you describe in detail in your book. And you started going through that here with like first plan, and then, going through the steps. Can you share a little bit more detail about that? And then can you also let us know the importance of clarity, which I know is one of those 6 steps?
Yeah, the 6 principles of the perfect pitch can kind of be split into 3 key phases. So you've got the preparation phase, the construction phase, and the create phase. So when it comes to the preparation phase, you've got 2 of those principles. You've got plan and projections. And this is particularly for pitching for kind of investment. And this is about your underlying business case, your financial projections. Everything needs to be in place first before you can even start thinking about the pitch. Like, a great pitch is built on a solid foundation, great strategy, and a great commercial strategy and projections that give investors a potential return. They can see that from the detail of the plan and the projection. So this is the thing that makes sure that your pitch in the end actually holds up to any scrutiny. Because you can pitch a great story, you can get investors excited, but as soon as they go into that second, third meeting, the due diligence, it all starts to fall apart because it's not built upon a solid foundation. So you have to get that foundation in place. And if it's a sales pitch, it's the same thing. It's kind of what's the foundation of the product and the positioning in your market and all of that. It's still that preparation of the brand and the product and what it is you're trying to create. So you've got to have that preparation in place, that solid foundation. Then you move into the construction phase, which is much more about the creation of the content. So here I talk about structure and content and clarity as the three main steps. So the structure is really about the order in which you tell the information and pass the information on to the audience. And a 5-step structure there that works for absolutely every pitch. You know, you've got to have a hook, have a big hook that gets people to lean in excitedly. So that might be your big vision, or it might be some incredible track or validation that you have. You've then got to talk about the essence of your idea, your value proposition, your problem, your solution. Then you've got to have some evidence. Then you've got to hit people with some kind of evidence that says, you know, this is something that not only I think is a great idea, but the market thinks is a good idea. And if that's a sales pitch, it's kind of it's testimonials, it's results you've achieved for your clients. So a lot of people leave that till the end of a pitch. They kind of go, oh, and by the way, here's some case studies. Move it up the front. It's the climax of the story. It's here's my concept, here's a great idea, and by the way, here's why it works, and here's the results we've got. And then go into the fourth step, which is plan. This is how we're going to deliver the results. This is our implementation strategy, or this is what an engagement with us looks like. Then go into the ask. The final step is the ask. Actually ask for the business. Have a call to action. What do you need to do to invest in me? What do you need to do to buy my product? Don't forget to actually ask for the money, right? Because a lot of people, they'll just leave people hanging. This is how, and they expect them to come to their own conclusion of, I need to buy this. You need to tell people to buy it or they won't. You need to tell people to invest in your business or they won't. So that's the structure. Hook, essence, evidence, plan, and ask. And if you follow that structure and have a few slides in each of those sections, you'll have a really kind of concise structure for your pitch. Then you move into the content. You kind of think, what am I actually going to say? How am I going to say it? This is all about storytelling. This is making sure you say as much as possible with as fewer words as possible. So some great tips there are around, you know, making sure that your headlines are kind of the conclusion that you want people to draw from the slide that you're presenting. Right? So rather than saying our solution or the problem you solve, it should be an attention-grabbing headline that really is the summary of all the other content in the slide. So if someone was to just flick through your pitch and just look at the headlines, they'd be able to get the kind of gist. And you're kind of subconsciously telling the audience what to think by giving them the conclusion of what you want them to, you know, what's the one key takeaway after I've delivered this slide? What's the one key takeaway I want them to have? That's your headline, because you're telling them up front what to think before you've even told them anything. That's kind of the content. And then just make sure it's really clear and concise. I use like a setup and score format, I call it. So you have like an introduction, which might be your headline or an introductory sentence. And then you kind of smash that home. You kind of prove that point with some really compelling bullet points or just a short, sharp sentence that just absolutely nails what you're trying to say. So kind of think of it as a setup and score, like playing volleyball. You kind of set up and then you smash it home. It's kind of, it needs to be quick and fast, like that, not long and drawn out. And then finally you have clarity, which is kind of a space, kind of going back over that content and just removing all of buzzwords, all of the industry jargon, because people, especially with investor pitches, you're not speaking to people who are in your industry or industry experts. You know, about 80% of angel investors would define themselves as sector agnostic. So they're not specialists in your niche. So you have to draw out that industry jargon. You have to make sure that anyone can understand it. So it's like panning for gold. You're kind of trying to get rid of all the silt and just be left with those golden nuggets of information. And it's just, what could be said with less words? Could I rephrase this from a 10-word sentence into a 5-word bullet point? It's that type of thing. And then once you've kind of got that content, and I would always recommend that you start in like Word or Google Docs or something, not a design tool, not a slide tool, but just kind of lay out slide 1, slide 2, slide 3 in kind of a Word document. Because if that messaging is working in black and white, 12-point Arial font, then once it's designed, it's going to blow people's socks off. You can't save poor communication with a beautiful design. You can't create poor communication and give it to a designer to make it look great and think that that's going to deliver the result. You have to get that communication right first. Then you move into the design phase, and really you just need to make look like an impressive business, look like the unicorn you promised to be. And it really just has a psychological impact, because actually it's the designs that's the first thing that anyone's going to see. The first thing an investor will see is the design. And within 4 seconds, they're going to make their mind up as to whether or not this looks like an awesome business that they could potentially invest into, or whether it looks a little bit rubbish. And you don't want to be looking a little bit rubbish, because then all of that great messaging that you've produced has to work twice as hard to convince the investor. But if they open it and they get that immediate first impression of like, oh, this looks good, they've got that positive frame of mind and they take in your message in a completely different way. And it has, that's a marginal gain that's going to have a massive impact onto whether or not you get that second meeting or not. So that's the process. That's the 6 principles: plan, projection, structure, content, clarity, and design.
Thanks
Awesome.
for taking us. Yeah, thanks for taking us
You're
through
welcome.
that. I love how you also, underscored that you really need to be firing on all cylinders. Like, if your communication is not there, but the design is beautiful, well, you're still missing the communication that you need, right? The message that you need. But then on the flip side, if you have all of the messaging there and it's the right message that's going to land, but the design is not great, then you're missing that opportunity there, because as you just said, the first thing that the investor is going to see is the design. But you really need to have both, right? You need to have everything kind of working in alignment.
Yeah, absolutely. You need the full package, or you've got work to do. I always like to think of it as something that really resonated with me was like in the London, was it the 2012 Olympics, and there was like the massive success of our cycling team. And it was all about marginal gains. It was all about like this little thing that we're going to do is going to give us like a 0.01 second advantage. And they were drilled into these marginal gains that were going to give them that advantage, to the point that they were just making stuff up for the athletes. So to get into their head and psychologically, like we had these big boiler suits, right? Our athletes would come out in these big boiler suits, and they were told that was going to keep their muscles warm, and it was going to give them like a 0.1 second advantage against their competitors. So they had this psychological head start, and all the competitors were going, oh, why haven't we got these big boiler suits? What are they doing different to us? And that's putting them at a 0.1 second psychological disadvantage. And it turned out afterwards from the scientists in GB cycling team that it was complete nonsense. They made it up. There was no scientific backing that this worked at all. It was all about the psychological edge. And I kind of think when you're pitching, anything you can do with your business to give you that kind of that slight psychological edge, or that competitive gain, that little gain just against everyone else who's pitching to the same investor for the same money, is well worth your time to invest into, because it's a dog-eat-dog world. Like 1% of founders successfully close a round. You've got to be in the top few percent to stand any chance, to get that gold medal. And you need those marginal gains to get into that elite space where you're actually closing rounds and closing deals.
Yes, you definitely do.
Awesome. And you mentioned about that the pitch needs to look good. And I'm sure, again, based on the number of pitches that you've seen, what's the definition of good? Because, we don't want necessarily, and I may be wrong, it's not about the gloss, it's about the content. And what do investors look for in a pitch, apart from, let's say, the storytelling? What are some of the pieces that they would be looking for?
In terms of the way it looked, the design of it. So.
In terms of content, in terms of design, are there things they're specifically looking? Because you may have a great glossy pitch deck, but not hardly any content or hardly any meaningful content, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to pitching for investment, there's 3 key parts. So my whole book is focused around becoming kind of an investable entrepreneur. And at its heart, what this means is investors and founders are speaking different languages, right? So investors like to speak the language of risk, assets, proof, implementation, and founders love to talk about possibilities and revenue and opportunities and ideas. And you're talking about the same concept, the same business, but you're talking about it in 2 completely different ways. And it's putting a barrier up between the investor and the founder. It's like you're speaking completely different languages. So the thing that a founder needs to do with their pitch is start to talk in investors' language, explain to an investor on their terms why their business is investable. So we know that investors are looking for three things in an entrepreneur. They're looking for one that's highly resourceful. They can pitch their vision really well. They can get people excited by their idea and get people to buy into their vision. That makes them highly resourceful. They can access capital when they want it. They can access talent when they want it. Like the best talent will come and work for them because they can get them to come and work below market rate for their amazing idea because they're so enthused by it and so great at pitching that concept. They can create game-changing commercial partnerships. All of this stuff happens to an entrepreneur that can pitch really well and can get people to buy into the vision. So that's why the pitch and the way it looks, the way you deliver it and what you say is so important. When we drill down into the content a little bit more, the next thing that an investor is looking for is an entrepreneur that understands the financial risks as well as the financial rewards. They understand how much money it's going to actually take to build a business of the scale that they're expecting. They know how long money's going to last, what their burn rate is. They know the risks they're asking the investors to take with their capital, but they also know the returns that could be achieved. But they're not just focusing on kind of top level, we're going to have 50 million or 100 million or whatever revenue by year 5. It's than that. We're going to have these valuable assets. Our business is going to be valued at that. We're going to deliver these returns, have this recurring revenue. They want you to understand the financial risks as well as the rewards. And then finally, they need to invest, and they want to invest in an entrepreneur that really understands how to create commercial success. So they're not just great at pitching an idea. They haven't just got a fancy spreadsheet that tells them all these numbers. They actually have an implementation strategy that says, here's where I am today. Here's what we're going to be doing in the short term with your cash right now to get to our next big strategic milestone. But here's what we're going to be doing over the next 5 years, over the longer term, to deliver a profitable exit to you. We've got this long-term plan. Whether it's strategic acquisitions are part of that plan, or whether it's launching into new markets or new territories or new verticals or new product releases or features that are going to be added. What's that long-term goal that's actually going to get you to that end result? And when you can package that all up through your pitch, your financial projections, your business plan, you've kind of got all the tools and the assets you need to express to an investor that you're an investable entrepreneur, you're highly resourceful, you understand the financial risks and rewards, you have a plan for creating commercial success. And once you've got all of that stuff, you can actually close the deal. Because remember, the pitch is just the thing that opens the door, right? It's the thing that gets the second and third meeting. It's the key to the safe, but it's not the thing that allows you to walk through the door and sort of pick up the gold bullion that's sitting there. It's that comes with your projections and your plan and all of the things that sit behind your pitch and give it credibility.
So James, I think that was a sharing of your main sort of framework by which people can get their pitching roadmap worked out. Now, your book itself is quite a statement when it comes to pitching as well, right? How did your book come about? What kind of inspired you to write this book?
I was having the same conversations with founders again and again, and it became very clear that there were some key fundamental things that I knew a lot about, but very few founders didn't. And it's because I've been doing the same thing as a job for founders for a number of years, and that there was this sort of understanding, there's a lack of understanding. No one really teaches you how to raise investment or what you need to do to raise investment. Whether you've been to business school or whatever, you're just not kind of taught about this stuff. So we're having the same conversations. It was very clear that it was kind of like this alien world that very few founders understood. So I wanted to kind of create a guide that was aimed at kind of pre-seed to Series A founders who are raising their first kind of major round of funding, that just gave them kind of everything they needed to know from kind of start to finish. So the beginning of the book is all about the kind of founding principles, the sort of foundational principles. Then there's the methodology I talked about, the 6 principles of perfect pitch. And then towards the end, it's like, what do you do now when you've got this pitch? How do you actually get in front of investors? Who should I approach? What's the right type of investor for me? And what's the strategy for doing that? How should I consider my campaign strategy? So I wanted it to be kind of a beginning to end kind of manual that really focused on unpacking this quite alien world to a lot of people. And because I come from a brand and communication background that almost fell into this industry because we had clients that we were doing brand work for that wanted us to with their pitch decks, and we kind of niched into this over time, I'm able to talk about it from a perspective of an entrepreneur who's learned this from an entrepreneurial perspective, rather than someone from a finance background who's trying to explain it to a founder. So I think that gave me a unique perspective to kind of make this as easy to digest and understand as possible.
Yes, definitely. And James, I understand you're working with clients globally, not just based in the UK, but globally around the world. And if folks are interested, you had mentioned that sort of 2-hour long session. If folks are interested in that, how are they able to participate in that?
Yeah, so in order to get access to the session, there's a step beforehand that we call our Pitch Ready Scorecard. And this is an online tool, an online quiz, where in 5 minutes you ask a few questions. You're asked a few questions, you answer those questions, and you get a free 12-page report on kind of how investor ready you are right now, how pitch ready you are, with some tips and guides and it kind of follows some of the methodologies I talked about today. From that, you'll be invited to a 2-hour session with me, completely free, and I can unpack some of the stuff I talked about today in greater detail. So that would be how you get access to that session.
Nice.
So
Thank you.
So I should probably say how you actually go about doing that, right? So if you wanted to actually take that test, take that scorecard, you just need to go to pitchready.co.uk and everything will kind of open up from there. So pitchready.co.uk, and then you'll get access to that session.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
And we'll obviously add these links into the show notes as well. So thanks for sharing that.
No, you're welcome.
And if folks wanted to download a copy of your book, which has lots of valuable information, you've touched on it here, but really it goes into a lot more detail. So if folks wanted to download a copy, how can they do that?
Yeah, so we actually have a free PDF available, no strings attached, no email addresses, nothing. You can just download the free PDF and get reading directly from the Robot Mascot website. So that's robotmascot.co.uk, and just follow the links there to get the book. So yeah, you can get a free PDF there. And obviously if you want a physical copy, it's available on all Amazon stores globally. So you can get a physical copy there. And if you are listening to this in the UK, we do actually ship out free copies to people in the UK, and all the links are on the website as well. So yeah.
Awesome.
Brilliant. And I think with that, and I was just looking at the watch, I mean, we could continue for at least another couple of hours. I mean, this is such an interesting topic, but like every other good thing, a good thing comes to an end. But before we wrap up, just a couple of things. First is, what's the best way people can get in touch with you? I mean, you already mentioned about your website. Are there other ways that people can get in touch with you?
I think the best place is probably LinkedIn. That's where I spend most of my time online. So yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, and yeah, we can chat from there.
Right. And I know Marcella has one question about you, but before I pass it back to her, any aspect or any tip that you would like to give to our listeners and viewers, pitching or fundraising in general, before I pass it to Marcella?
Any final tip? Read my book. Read my
Brilliant.
book and learn. Is that too cheeky? A final tip. I think just persevere. So something I talk about in my book is beyond kind of getting all the assets in place, is the personality traits of an investable entrepreneur, and to have that belief and that conviction and that confidence. It can take time, and you'll get lots of knockbacks from investors that just don't get it or don't want to get it. And you have to have that conviction. You have to just keep going. And when you don't give up and you keep going, and you have that resilience, you'll succeed. So I think that's probably my top tip, is to have that kind of with or without you energy, that kind of, this is going to happen regardless of whether you invest in me or not. I'll find another investor, and if you can have that, then you'll succeed.
I think that's an awesome way of ending the session, or at least my questions, and persevere. Definitely, because people often think that, I can pitch to an investor. It's going to be 1 or 2 discussions and that's it. I'll be able to raise money, but it's a long walk, and people have to persevere. I think that's a brilliant one. Over to you, Marcella. I know you're dying to ask that question.
Thanks, Anirvan. Yeah, James, we learned a lot about your work today, which was fantastic. And we kind of wanted to also get to know you on a personal level as well. And for our listeners, or anyone that may be listening or watching, curious to know, is there a fun fact you'd be willing to share with us?
Fun facts. Oh, what? Any theme? Any or just anything?
Anything that's interesting that maybe a lot of people don't already know about you?
Outside of work, I'm a scout leader, so I actually help and support young people with their development, with their personal development through scouting. So that's something I've done since I was a child. My parents were scout leaders, so it's something I do outside of work. I've taken a short break to have a couple of children from that because life has got very hectic. I'll be jumping back in very soon as well. So yeah, very passionate about getting outdoors and learning through doing and inspiring the next generation. So yeah, that's probably something no one knows about.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that, inspiring the next generation. And you mentioned children. What ages are your children?
So I've got a 3-year-old and I've got a 4-month-old. Yeah, super cute at the moment, having the second one come along and watching the first Henry turn into a big brother. He's super cute. So yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. Awesome. So we are all parents as well. That's something we have in common.
There we go.
Absolutely. I mean, this has been such a fun discussion, and I love the analogy and the stories that you've shared, James. I'm sure our viewers and listeners are going to find a lot of value. And plus, of course, we're giving them goodies. We're giving them a couple of things for free, like your PDF copy of your book, as well as the scorecard, where they can actually, pitch in, or rather, they can find out how ready are they to pitch in. So this has been an awesome interview.
You're very welcome.
Yes.
I want to help as many founders as possible. So hopefully those two things will do that.
Yes. Thank you, James, so much. Really appreciated everything you shared with us. I learned a lot. I know all of the listeners will as well. And for anyone listening, if you liked what you heard, please give us a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And there's 8 different podcast channels, including Google, Spotify, and Apple as well.
All right, guys. So with that, we are going to come to the end of today's episode. As Marcel has already mentioned about the liking and the subscribing. And also, if you have any other comments, do put it in the comment section of the platform. We would love to hear from you. And I'm sure James would love to hear about pitching recommendations as well as your input on pitching. So with that, I would wish everybody a very happy weekend. And till next episode, bye-bye. And if you liked the episode, I'm sure you'll also like our latest new tool. It is a quick assessment scorecard to assess the robustness of your M&A integration design. It just takes less than 5 minutes to answer. It is for free and you get an instantaneous recommendation. So visit maintegrationplan.scoreapp.com and find out for yourself. maintegrationplan.scoreapp.com. Bye-bye.